All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I think we got knock on plastic simulated IKEA style wood here, but you know, I think we got the glitches out for tonight, so we should be good. I hope. Bob, did you watch any of the combine this weekend?
In and out. In and out. I mostly tuned in to see, to see a couple specific players or a couple specific positions. What kind of athletic numbers that they put up. But I mean, and you know what I'm like, Alan. This by this time of year, I have watched so much film, on these guys and. I'm a track guy. I'm the first to admit that. So I love, I love the 40. But yeah, the underwear Olympics do little for me to tell me that a person can actually play football. I don't pay attention to the 40 times if I'm interested in a prospect. I will pay attention to the shuttles, to the three cone drills because that shows me quickness and change of direction.
Mhm.
Which is far more important to me when it comes to a prospect. But like I said, it just and the combine is so watered down now. With the media talking heads. If I wasn't sick, I'd have probably driven in, jumped in the car. Because Indianapolis is like a 6 hour drive from me. Ross Jackson, John Hendricks were up there for us. Covering it. So I'd have probably joined them if I wasn't sick. And had different things to do with Will. But even Ross and John told me your exposure to the prospects, your ability to interview them is so limited. That it
Mhm.
frankly would have been a waste of my time.
Yeah, that's to me that's one of the only reason why the combine really still exists. Uh, and I'm the same way. I don't get into the whole underwear Olympics because a 40 time a shuttle drill that doesn't really show me how good of a football player. It shows me how good a shape someone's in.
Yeah.
Um, and it may help, those guys in the third and fourth rounds that probably could have been an undrafted free agent or a seventh round guy kind of go up a little bit. And, that's pretty much all the combine is now because you have pro days, you have so many avenues to start really watching these guys. And there's so many examples of workout warriors
Hmm.
whose draft stock shot up because of what they did in the combine. I think somebody, I'm trying to think of the name of the receiver now, did a 4.1, I think it was, in the 40, something ridiculous like that. And people like, oh, future Raider, and I think about the receiver. I think the Bengals ended up selecting John Ross, who had, the great speed. Um, Ray Malamala, I think that was his first name, the Boston College kid the Eagles took. An outstanding workout combine, but he wasn't a good football player. Um, Even Marcus Davenport, really, it wasn't just the combine, it was also his pro day, showed these incredible athletic ability, his size, his speed, his explosion off the ball, all these things. But he played at San Antonio State University, played against Division II level competition. You saw he had a lot of trouble disengaging from NFL level tackles. So his stock shot up to a first round pick. A lot of fans are like, he wasn't really a first round pick. He was, but the combine helped push him forward like that. So you have to really watch out for that. And of course, the most famous draft bust of all, the offensive lineman the Packers took, the incredible Bulk. Five Hall of Famers went in the first six picks of that draft class, and he was number two overall, and
Hmm.
he was the only bust. I mean, Troy Aikman, Deion Sanders, Derek Thomas. I forgot who the fifth one was now. The
Barry
fourth one.
Sanders.
Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders. Yes. They all go in the top 5 picks in that draft. And I just forgot his name now because I
The
can just
Packers?
yeah, I
Mandrich,
can
Tony
just
Mandrich.
yeah, Tony Mandrich. Yeah. I can remember the Sports Illustrated cover. This unbelievable physique. He looked like he was on Venice Beach. In fact, he did spend time at Venice Beach.
Yeah.
You know, the tagline was the greatest offensive lineman in NFL history, to come out of the draft because he had everything. And Jamie Dukes talked about him. He says his feet were terrible. His feet were
Hmm.
pointed, and if your feet stink, you can't block. And they used to talk about Willie Rofe. He walked like John Wayne, but his feet were perfect, and that's why he was a Hall of Famer.
Yep.
So it's just that's the part that kind of that always gets lost to me in the combine. Can these guys play football?
Hmm.
And they can't. A lot of these guys just can't. They look great in shorts and t-shirts, and we see that in training camp too. Guys that look incredible catching, especially skill players,
Yeah.
catching passes and not being pressured. Oh, UL alum right there, Brian Mitchell. Uh, this is the 2000 Saints for those who are wondering, and that was Brian Mitchell returning that kick for a touchdown. That was near the end of his career. Another guy who should be in the Hall of Fame, but that's not important right now.
Hmm.
And I know him. He was a friend of mine.
Yeah.
He's still alive. Don't get me wrong. I just don't see him very often anymore. I haven't seen him in a good 20, 30 years. Yeah, they're going to throw Brian's stats. Brian was a quarterback from Plaquemines,
Hmm.
and he was short. He was built like a fire plug. That was the
Yeah.
best way I could put it. Short arms, short legs, but his chest was just huge. And yeah, he was something. He really was. He run and shoot quarterback. He could throw. I'll never forget the body bag game,
Hmm.
the Eagles versus the Redskins. I'm watching this game on Monday Night Football, and Brian Mitchell comes in as the emergency quarterback because he no, you didn't see Stallworth yet. This is 2000. Stallworth comes in 2 years. We got to trade Ricky Williams first to get
Yeah.
Dante Stallworth. But yeah, we that's probably Jake Reed you saw. He was 86. He just looks like it's 83. But yeah, the body bag game, they knock out Rutledge, they knock out somebody else before they had to put Brian Mitchell as quarterback. And I'm in my apartment watching this game, and my phone starts ringing off the hook. Alan, you watching Monday Night Football? Look who's playing quarterback. I'm like, yeah. And you saw his first play? Mitchell keeps. So I mean, anybody's been Cajun Field during Brian Mitchell days, that was the most common play call you heard. Mitchell keeps, and he runs for a first down. So, but yeah. But back to the combine. So, on the plus side with the combine, though, you look at a guy like Teron Armstead. There was somebody who did show up as a workout warrior. There was somebody who did run an incredible 40 time for an
Hmm.
offensive lineman, and he turned out to be a really good football player too. So you have to be careful when you watch these underwear Olympics. And now that we have this incredible media coverage 24/7 of the draft, and everyone and their grandma put down a mock draft, guys go up the board that really shouldn't be up on the that
Hmm.
high on the board, and a lot of it is because of these combines, or
Yeah.
because they look at the positions and they go, you know what, there's not that many good, I don't know, safeties in this, so somebody's got to take a safety in the first round. So we're going to talk up this one guy
Hmm.
and kind of talk him into a first round pick. And you see that a lot with, Jeff Blake could. throw the ball out the picture. Um, Once he got comfortable, it's unfortunate because he got comfortable and then he got hurt
Yeah.
against Carolina. Not this game, it's Carolina at Carolina. No, I'm sorry, the Raiders game. Ricky gets hurt at Carolina the week before. But yeah, it's this is also something good to watch for those who sit there and look at the Ricky Williams trade and go, "But that was stupid." Ricky Williams wasn't that good of a player. Yes, he was.
Yeah, he
If you
was.
watch these highlights, that's a trivia question for you. Name the first Saints running back to go have back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. It's Ricky Williams.
It is.
No other Saints running back has done it before, and Deuce McAllister was the first one to do it since. And Mark Ingram did it as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, no other, not George Rogers, not Chuck Muncie, not Dalton Hilliard, not Ruben Mays. None of those running backs ever had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. It's amazing to think about.
Mhm.
To the, what was it, 34 years, 35 years before a Saints running back. Well, it took to 1979 to just even a 1,000-yard rusher. So,
Right.
yeah. Oh, first time he beat the Falcons in 10 tries, this game right here. So, it's another favorite game of mine. And that's Ricky Williams going at it. Bob, I'm kind of dominating this conversation. One of the things I wanted to talk about, yeah, AK hasn't done it either. Alvin
No.
Kamara hasn't done that yet either. Different kind of running back. Bob, we want to look. Free agency. Excuse me. Free agency starts in a week from now. We want to look kind of at each position. Free agent or draft pick. Looking at some of the stuff that you've looked at so far, the film, some of the combine work, that kind of stuff. Quarterbacks are always the first thing people want to look at. We have Derek Carr. Jameis Winston's currently a free agent, I believe, or he will be a free agent. And also, Norman Hand, I met him. Good guy, nice guy. Unfortunately, he passed away, but good guy. And Jake Hayner. If Winston walks in free agency, are you replacing that backup quarterback with a veteran? If so, who? Or would you take a risk on a draft pick because they're cheap?
Alan, I think because Derek Carr got dinged up a lot last year, and Jake Hayner is so unproven. I mean, you're not talking about just a second-year player. You're talking about a second-year player who got limited reps in training camp, and then got himself suspended for the first 6 weeks of the season, where he wasn't even allowed around team facilities. So you're talking about an extra inexperienced second-year quarterback. Because of those reasons, I believe that the Saints are going to look hard, for a veteran with at least some starting experience, to back up Derek Carr, or at the very least give some competition to Jake Hayner, make him earn the number 2 job. I don't discount the possibility that if the Saints see a quarterback on day 3, that maybe a Milton from Tennessee, or if Pratt from Tulane somehow drops to day 3, someone that Clint Kubiak really likes for his system. I don't discount that, but again, I still believe that ultimately they'll let Jameis Winston walk, because he's not a Dennis Allen guy. Dennis Allen made that very, very clear without coming out and saying it. So I think that they'll just go out and get a fairly inexpensive veteran, probably on a 1 year, 1 year deal, or a 2 year deal with an option opt out after the first year. A guy like Sam Darnold, as awful as Sam Darnold is, it makes sense on paper, because Sam played for Clint Kubiak's offense in San Francisco last year. Drew Lock, from the Seahawks if he hits free agency. Drew played for Clint Kubiak and Rick Dennison in Denver, or maybe a guy like Tyrod Taylor, or if nobody overpays for Mason Rudolph. Again, you're not. It's not a splash signing. I grant you that. But it's a guy that is at least started with moderate success in this league. To turn to. So they're not going to draft a quarterback in the first or second round. And they're not going to go after any of the forget Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, and all that different bullshit.
Well, Nick Underhill has been talking up guys that have played under Kubiak or played in Shanahan's kind of system. Sam Darnold's one name he's brought up. I shudder at that name, but
Same.
it makes sense from that standpoint. Another name that comes up every so often, this is Riplet saying, it's Jimmy Garoppolo. My only concern with Garoppolo is Garoppolo probably still thinks he can start somewhere. And you want to get a quarterback cheap. So you probably want to target somebody outside of Garoppolo's price range. You want to get somebody a lot lower. Cousins is talking about going to Atlanta, which is highly possible. You had an article, though, the other day about Justin Fields and the Bears being interested in trading Justin Fields. Cutting to the chase, we're not giving up a first-round pick for Fields. We're not giving up a second-round pick for Fields. But if Fields was available for, say, a fifth-rounder, would you make that trade?
I think the Saints, might consider it. Yeah. And here's why. And guys, check it out on the Saints News Network. I published the article, I believe, this morning. I did write about the pros and the cons of doing it. Like Alan said, there's no way in hell. Reportedly the Bears asking prices for a first or second round pick, and trying to pry away from a veteran starter as well. No way in hell the Saints give up even close to that. So if the trade market for Justin Fields turns out to be dry, as I expect it will, and Fields doesn't get moved before the draft, and you're into May, maybe even June, and Fields is still officially a Bear. By that point, maybe the Saints sit back and call Chicago and say, you know what, we'll offer you a conditional fifth-round pick. To bring in Fields, because he's a dynamic on the plus side, he's a dynamic athlete. Dynamic, every bit as good a runner as Michael Vick too, but Lamar Jackson, every bit as good a runner. He's still on a rookie deal. And you have 1 year before you have to decide whether to pick up his fifth-year option. Again, looking at that, if you bring in Fields, who, by the way, threw to Chris Olave for 2 years in college, played for Janocko, the new Saints quarterback coach, for 2 years in Chicago. So there's some familiar ties here. If you see if you make that hypothetical trade for a conditional day 3 pick, and you see some development, you're talking about now a 24-year-old kid that still on a rookie deal, that maybe you could turn to and either A, negotiate for a long-term deal, or B, turn around and trade him to another quarterback needy team and get an even higher draft pick back for than what you gave up. Those are the pros. The cons, again, the familiar ties with Janocko, maybe not a good thing, because Andrew got fired along with the rest of that Bears offensive staff. So maybe Andrew's not so excited to work with Justin Fields again. Justin showed very, very little progression as a passer. Maybe he doesn't have the tools to read a defense, the way Clint Kubiak and Rick Dennison and those guys, need him to do. And because there's been so little progression, A, do you even want to give up a day 3 pick? And B, the entire reason why the Saints wouldn't give up a higher pick is because they need to fill a lot of needs on this team. Well, even giving up a day 3 pick, that's a potential need either for depth purposes, or to use in a package to trade up and get a higher draft pick. So, the asking price, even if it would fall to a fifth, sixth round pick, that still might be too high for New Orleans. So, I mean, folks, I give a big hypothetical. If it was, my show, the Bayou Blitz, the middle finger would already be up. So I'll give the big hypothetical middle finger to you assholes, that only read or comment on a title. Read the article. It outlines in a little bit more detail everything that Alan and I just said, why it could happen, why the Saints could be dark horse contenders if the trade price drops, why the Saints could do it, and why I don't believe at the end of the day they would do it. So, long-winded answer to your question. Would I do it if the trade price drops significantly? No, I still don't think I would, but I acknowledge that it could be a possibility.
Well, and the reason why I brought this up, aside from the fact I'm going to promote your article. So the Saints met with Jaden Daniels. They met with Drake May, I believe. They met with a lot of the quarterbacks they expect to go in the first round. J.J. McCarthy, I think, was another one. Caleb Williams is kind of, I don't know what the hell he's doing. It's not even John Elway-ish, like saying, I don't want the Bears to draft me. I want to get drafted by somebody else, a contender. But he is just kind of out there saying, his dad's saying he wants to have part ownership in the team and he wants to have this and that. And people people in hell just want a glass of ice water. I mean, I want a pony. It's just, that's not really what you're saying is not realistic at all. But anyway, this is what it comes to when you start making these kind of decisions about a guy like Justin Fields. You go back to those draft interviews you did at the combine. You go back to those draft reviews that you and your scouts did, even though you had no intention or possibility of really drafting this guy. You go back to what your grades were, what you dinged him on, what you thought his strengths were. Then you put on the professional tape and you start looking at, okay, we said this guy was a poor passer. Does he show development in his passing? No, he has not. So you make these decisions. So you decide whether or not you want to pull the trigger on a trade like this. Personally, I think the Bears are stuck with him because I don't think anyone's going to make this trade. Atlanta was a possibility, but it sounds like Atlanta is going to go Kirk Cousins. Pittsburgh is a name that keeps getting mentioned too because they just start picking teams that need quarterbacks. Las Vegas is another one. But these teams are also teams that are high enough in the draft that they could possibly go get this guy, one of the guys they want in the draft, or they could go get a veteran guy. Jimmy Garoppolo in Pittsburgh might make sense, that kind of thing. Jameis Winston in Pittsburgh might make sense too. So, it's those kind of, you kind of start balancing these things out and you won't know until free agency happens. And I expect if Fields gets traded, barring a draft day trade, I expect Fields maybe to be a guy who gets traded after injuries happen, training camp, something like that. Teams just aren't going to do the 1-year rental on him. But it's an interesting prospect because he's cheap right now, which is in the Saints price range. And he has familiarity with some of the coaches on this offensive staff. I don't think he does it either. I don't think the Saints pull the trigger on it. I don't think the Saints are interested in him. I think the Saints probably graded him pretty lowly for their offense. So I just don't see it happening. I feel the same way. I think the Saints get a veteran guy. I don't know who this guy may be. It may even be Winston who comes back again, just because the price is right. But I do think they would like to find a veteran guy that is cheap, has starting experience, and can act as another voice in the room to talk to Carr and talk to him about the things they see. And I think it's somebody who is familiar with Kubiak's offensive scheme. I don't know who that guy is yet, but I would not be surprised to see a Tyrod Taylor. I would not be surprised to see a Sam Darnold if he leaves San Francisco. I would prefer Jimmy Garoppolo over those two guys, just because I don't trust those other two guys. But
Right.
if Sam Darnold comes out there, I mean, that's like Billy Joe Tolliver coming out.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I do not want to see Sam Darnold out there playing for any length as a Saint at all.
Nope.
But it's just one of those positions. Running back. Uh, we talked last week all about how the Saints are going to be looking at being a run first team. They want to run the football. The coaches they brought in are designed to run the ball. We know what Alvin Kamara can do. We've seen glimpses of what Kendre Miller can do. Jamal Williams was kind of a bust. He did not perform the way we were hoping he would. But at the same time, oh yeah, there's Tom Benson's second wife right there, by the way. Before Gail, she passed away from cancer. Tom didn't kill her or divorce her, but that was his second wife. But Jamal Williams also was used in a way that he wasn't used in Detroit. He was used kind of as a fullback, blocking back. Do you think they make any upgrades or get any free agents or trade for anybody or even draft somebody this year to try and upgrade that running back room?
At running back, I'd be surprised, because again, we know what Kamara can do, and he's the number one back in this offense. I expect a bigger role from Jamal Williams, under Clint Kubiak, who's going to use him a little bit differently, and I'm excited to see the way Clint Kubiak uses Kendre Miller if Miller can stay healthy. So I would be absolutely shocked if they go after anybody in free agency. And equally shocked if they go after a running back early in the draft. Now, once you get into day 3, and you joined us you joined Brandon and I on our Bayou Blitz draft extravaganza last year. Hopefully, you'll do so again. And we all three talked about once you get into day 3, at that point, you're just looking for the best available player on your board that's left. You don't expect to fill a team need with a fourth, maybe a fourth, but not a fifth, sixth, seventh round draft choice. So if they see a running back there in those rounds, it wouldn't surprise me to bring somebody in at that point. It's more than a camp body, and Lord knows we have seen late round draft choices and undrafted free agents, have an impact for the Saints franchise in the past.
Keith Poole just got knocked out cold, by the way. That's an illegal shot today. I just saw that hit as I'm looking at the screen here. And yeah, that's why he doesn't play in the playoff game, because he was not cleared for concussion protocol. Kurt Warner got a concussion in that game, but as everyone remembers from the playoffs, he played the following week, and it showed. He was not the same guy. But anyway, that hit just reminded me of how much the rules have changed in football. I feel the same way. I'm curious to see if they make a move at fullback though this year.
Yeah.
Adam Prentice is kind of a converted tight end / H-back. Has okay hands, okay blocking, but not really good at any one particular thing. He's not a good ball handler as a running back, which is one of the reasons why Jamal Williams was basically used as a fullback. Um, Fullback's not a position that really pops on draft boards. Is not a position that you see in free agency, but I'm really curious to see what the Saints do there because I think that's one of the keys to this offense to get better is to find a fullback, find somebody out there who can be the blocker, who can go out for passes. That's not named Taysom Hill because Taysom Hill they want to do other things with, but they would like to get a full-time fullback. And I'm telling you, it's really been probably since the kid from the Vikings, not Kuhn, he was from the Packers, but he came after he played in 2018, 2017.
Is that Ham? Number 30?
Yeah, it's going to drive me crazy till I see it. Hang on. Let me see. Because he retired, and he was the last really good fullback we had. So let me see. It will drive me crazy till I see his name. Zach Line.
Oh, yeah. I like Zach.
Zach Line. Yeah, that was probably I'd love to get him. That's my my underrated man crush. This guy, and maybe it's because he's wearing Tom Rathman's number. I don't know what it is, but man, I just would love to get a fullback who can block, who can catch passes, can run pass routes. Um, you know, that's what you got with Heath Evans. That's what you got with Zach Line, John Kuhn, Jedediah Collins. Those guys were really doing the kind of things that we liked in our offense. But yeah, I just. I really think they need a true fullback to help Alvin Kamara, but also to help with the running game because that brings us to our next thing. Offensive line, we're going to break this up in parts here because obviously center's good, but let's look at the tackles first. Your tackles on this team currently, Andres Pete is a free agent. You have Ryan Ramczyk and his bad knees. You've got Trevor Penning, which is a total mystery box. And you've got James Hurst, who is basically your sixth offensive lineman, your sixth man, not really somebody you want out there starting. Draft or free agent?
Draft, and I know this makes a lot of Saints fans angry as well as it should because the Saints have drafted an offensive lineman, and I think 7 of the last 8 or 8 of the last 9 drafts. And the ratio on hitting on them is probably about 50-50. But here's why I say draft here. Offensive tackle, it is very, very, very rare that you get a quality tackle hitting the free agent market in their prime. And when those 1 in 10,000 ratio chances do hit, those players are going to break the market. And to give you an idea, here are really the top tackles available in free agency. Tyron Smith, past his prime, injury prone. Dwayne Brown, past his prime. Jonah Williams from the Bengals, who has had an inconsistent career, only 26 though, going to command big money. Donovan Smith, past his prime, and we know him well from the Buccaneers. Need I say more? And George Fant, past his prime and couldn't pass block even when he was in his prime. So that's what you have at tackle in free agency. Meanwhile, in the draft, you have, in what my opinion, I've watched already about 6 or 7 tackles or guard tackle hybrids. I like a lot of the guys that I see. Now, a few of them are raw. If I'm the Saints, I avoid that only because you need a plug and play guy if you're going to draft somebody in the first or second round. He has to be a plug and play guy. But yeah, given what I just named down to you at offensive tackles and the reason why that market is typically so thin, I think the Saints have no choice but to draft one. And I still believe they need to do it in the first round.
Yeah, and I agree totally on that because yeah, and that's really the theme of this show. It was when I came up with this title, old Clint Black song, "A Good Run and Bad Luck," because you look at the offensive linemen we have drafted since 2014 in the first round, going back to Andres Pete. You drafted Cesar Ruiz in the first round. You drafted Ryan Ramczyk in the first round. You drafted Trevor Penning in the first round. A lot of these guys, Penning's case in particular, you traded up to get this guy.
Mm-hmm.
You McCoy was a second round pick. So you're trying to get these offensive linemen. You're trying to get what you think is going to be the building blocks of your team, and you're missing on these badly. And sometimes it is a question of luck. You get a guy. Let's go back to Willie Roaf when Willie Roaf got drafted in '93. Willie Roaf gets drafted 8th overall. I think Lincoln Kennedy got drafted 10th overall. Willie Roaf's a Hall of Fame player. Lincoln Kennedy had a nondescript career that ended very shortly. It didn't go nearly as long as Willie Roaf, who was a two-time all-decade NFL player. So, yeah, they'll most likely, yeah. Brian Milne, who we had on this show one time. Yeah. Absolutely. One of the great, still my favorite, all-time favorite Jim Henderson call.
Yes.
Topping the Super Bowl, topping the NFC Championship game because his voice cracked
Yeah.
when he did it. And, and the line, "There is a God after all." Given that game and how that game was going, it was the perfect expression. But yes.
Yeah.
So my feeling is the draft is deep enough at offensive tackle that you possibly could wait to 45 and get a good tackle. It's scary. I'd rather trade up if I'm going to do that from 45 and get a guy, maybe get him at 33, top of the second round.
Yeah.
Because so many skill players are going to start coming up the board too. The tight ends, the wide receivers, because the wide receiver market, people just aren't going to pay wide receivers anymore. They're going to draft wide receivers. So you're going to see a lot of receivers go off the board, which is good for the Saints because while we need receivers, and I'm going to get to that position in a second, but while we need receivers, we don't have to draft one.
Right.
We have to draft an offensive tackle. So that I agree with you totally. Now Calvin's jumping ahead on me here. Yeah, you're right. That is a name I am seeing around that area.
I like him.
I like him a lot. I just don't know. I would feel better with a higher pick in the second round because now that the draft is 3 days like it is, I always feel like the second round, they kind of get a chance to reassess their board and they start making a lot of moves. So a run could happen that could take Mims away at, say, 40 or 41. And that's the only scary thing for me. Guard. And I'm going to jump on you, Calvin, because you read my mind here. I love both these guys at guard. And I'm willing to spend the money in free agency over drafting somebody. How about you? Would you draft a guard or would you sign one in free agency?
I would go free agency for the reason that you just mentioned. You can paying a top level guard in free agency usually doesn't cost you nearly as much as the rare occasion when you overpay, for a top end tackle. We've seen the Saints have a lot of success at bringing in free agent guards, both top tier and second tier free agents. Dotson Hunt are two of the names that stick out to me too. Jonah Jackson from the Lions,
Hmm.
Dalton Risner, who has played a few years in Kubiak's system, Kubiak and Dennison. Even Kevin Zeitler from the Ravens or Connor Williams from the Dolphins. Just a few guys. Aaron Stinney had some success with the Buccaneers. A little bit injury prone. So yeah, I'm not against drafting a guard, but that's usually a position where you can get some quality in the middle rounds. Frankly, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing both. You target a guard, a top tier guard in free agency, and then you flip around, and if one falls to you that you like, much like the way they liked Nick Saldivari last year, and they made a move, to trade for him early in day three. I wouldn't be opposed to both, but I would definitely get this need crossed off early in free agency.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're looking at a. To me, you have to rebuild the left side of the offensive line,
Yeah.
and Andres Pete. Maybe you're bringing him back.
Mm-hmm.
Not at what he got paid before. You want him cheap. A guy like um the I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. Oh, the hang on a second here. We'll do this one. But a guy like um I can't believe I just forgot his name. The starting guard for the Saints this past year. Um
Hurst?
Hurst, get James. Don't ask me why I was thinking Garrison Hurst.
No.
Probably could have been watching this crap too long.
2000, right.
Yeah. But James Hurst, if you're bringing in a guy like James Hurst, you're bringing him as a sixth offensive lineman who can fill in on a pinch, but you don't want him playing any length of time.
Well,
So,
and not to interrupt you, but remember Trey Turner, when they signed him,
mhm,
a lot of us, myself included, thought that he would very quickly develop into a starter. Before I think it was his Achilles that he tore
yeah,
only a day or two into practice. Now Trey Turner is a free agent too, but this is a number one draft choice, former number one draft choice, who's played some good football in this league, made a Pro Bowl or
mhm,
two, and is only about 30 or 31 too. So that's another under the radar re-signing that the Saints could do as well.
right. And so, I'm looking at, and then I'm not giving up on Salvadori. I'm
Hmm.
not giving up on Penning, but I don't want to count on those guys either.
Mhm.
I want a lot of competition in there and make those guys better. And at worst, you've got young talent behind the guys that you could possibly move into. And if you want to move on from Cesar Ruiz, for example, if Salvadori pans out, or if you sign a veteran guard, you get a young guy, you could push that veteran and maybe slide in and take his place after a year. It just turns out to be a 1 year rental. Whatever it takes, though, to upgrade this offensive line, because running and the offensive line, the running back position, the offensive line, I think are the most critical positions in this draft for the offense. Um, Tight end receivers now. I'm grouping both of them together. We talked a lot about tight ends last week, but what about receivers? I mean, Michael Thomas, we're pretty much saying that we're ready to move on from him. He is ready to move on from us.
Mhm.
Uh, so you've got two starters. You possibly have a third starter in A.T. Perry, but what receivers would you like maybe in the draft or free agency to bring in kind of as the, I guess, competition depth, somebody that, so you're not going to MVS, you're not going to him, you're not
No,
bringing back Trash Smith,
no.
you're trying to avoid those guys. So what kind of player are you looking for as a receiver?
I'd like, if I'm going to go after one in free agency, I'd like to get a big-bodied, possession kind of guy. A guy that's going to move the sticks, and draw coverage into the intermediate zones. So Rashid and Olave have a little bit more opportunity to go deep. I would love Tyler Boyd in this offensive system. I think he would be a spectacular fit. I've mentioned KJ Osborne more than a few times on this show, on my show, on Jordy's show. KJ had the best numbers of his career in Minnesota playing for Clint Kubiak and Rick Dennison. Wouldn't overpay for a receiver, though. Tyler Boyd, KJ Osborne, they've been number 3 receivers or 2B receivers most of their career. Those are the type of guys that if I'm going to bring one in free agency, that's who I'm going to bring in. The draft, on the other hand, we aren't too far away. We're only a year or two away from talking about whether the Saints could or should or would pick up a 5th-year option for Chris Olave. And NFL teams draft this way too. Oftentimes draft this way. Not necessarily, not only just what we need now, but what are we going to need next year at this time? What are we going to need in 2 years at this time? Because we can't afford to pay player A or player B because they're going to be asking for too much. And you just said a couple moments ago how ridiculously overpriced free agent wide receivers often are. Whether that's on the open market or whether they're because they're getting franchise tagged or extended by their current teams. So if a Roman Dunze from Washington falls to 14, man, I love that kid. I would absolutely love him, and I would not necessarily throw stuff at my TV if they drafted him and put off the need for an edge rusher or an offensive tackle. Having said that, I think it's more likely that the Saints, if they draft one, they would target a wide receiver and or a tight end either early in day 3 or as day 2, as the 3rd round is coming to an end. If they see a pass catcher, tight end or wide receiver that they really like, then they package a few of those day 3 compensatory picks that they're going to have and move to get one then.
It's interesting. I'm looking at some of the free agents that are going to be available, and as usual, the receivers that top the list: Calvin Ridley, Hollywood Brown. Because they're speed guys.
Right.
Possession guys in free agency are very much in demand, but they don't get the big bucks quite like the speed guys do. If the speed guys are going to get anybody, Tyler Boyd, they've got him ranked as the 31st best free agent out there, regardless of position, and they're projecting that a 2-year, $14 million contract, which
that's not bad.
That's very affordable if you think about it. Very, very much affordable compared to, say, Hollywood Brown or Calvin Ridley, which they're projecting more in a line of 20 million, 25 million, 2 or 3 years. So, my thing is Hunter Renfro's still out there. He's a popular name. We talked about Osborne, KJ Osborne from the Vikings, as another receiver we could look at because of familiarity with Kubiak, and they know what he can do. That kind of stuff, those kind of players, that fills a need. Plus, you can maybe go get a a draft pick much later in the draft, 6th round, 7th round, undrafted free agent, just like Rashid Shaheed. I'm not spending a lot of money on that position, but I'm going to try and find a veteran guy, again, to have a voice in the room, another coach in the room that's familiar with the offense, that could kind of coach this team's receiving core into what they're expected to do, and somebody who can make those contested catches.
Yeah.
Now, tight end, I don't know about that one here. We're going to talk about Dallas Turner in a minute, but I'm staying away from LSU players right now as far as receivers. I just am. It's just not worth it right now. But tight end, we talked a lot last week about the Georgia tight end Bowers. We talked about the limitations that tight end room has because you
Mhm.
don't have a true tight end, a difference maker tight end, and how much a difference maker at tight end is when you look at the teams that made the playoffs and what those guys did. Now, Travis Kelsey, George Kittle, those guys don't hit the free agent market, and the Texans, I
Yeah,
think, just re-signed
it did.
Schultz, who knows nothing. He sees nothing. But Hogan's Heroes for those of you under
Mhm.
40. But um, my scenario with this, Calvin, if Bowers falls to 14, it's because 5 quarterbacks went in the first 10, 12 picks. And that includes JJ McCarthy.
Mhm.
Um, and 3 guards, maybe two or not guards, tackles, 2 to 3 defensive ends, and a receiver. And those kind of things, that's how I see Bauer sliding.
Yeah.
Um, but that's a lot of ifs. 5 quarterbacks going in the first 12 picks. That's huge. That's more than the 1983 class. That's
Mhm.
more than the 2004 class. That's more than even the infamous 2000 class with Achilles Smith and those guys. That's a lot to go in the top 12 picks, but I can see 4 quarterbacks going possibly, given the needs of those teams. My question is, what happens with Chicago at 9? I think it is because they've got the first overall pick. They have the ninth overall pick. The logical thing for Chicago would be get your quarterback, get your either offensive tackle or your wide receiver
Mhm.
uh, in those picks. Okay, Chicago may try and sell that draft pick, trade that draft pick away to acquire more picks, a la the Arizona Cardinals. I don't know, and if they do that, then someone is trading up to take Bowers, or someone is
Mhm.
trading up to go grab somebody like that. But given the needs of those teams, especially you look at the Broncos, where the Broncos are sitting, they just cut Russell Wilson. They're not going to go with Trevor Simeon as their starter. They're not going to go with Jason Stidham as their starter. They're going to get their quarterback, and whether that's Penix, whether that's JJ McCarthy, I don't know who they're going to go for, but they're getting a quarterback with that pick. And Peyton's going to be running that draft room, so
Yep.
Peyton might be the one guy who wants to trade up with Chicago to make sure he gets his quarterback. So um, yeah, I think everybody's been eyeing Dallas Turner, but going back to tight ends, who do you like at tight end? Maybe in free agency, if
I
you
tell you
can't get
what,
Bowers.
and like we talked about last week, we know Juwan Johnson is an excellent receiver in space. We know Jimmy Graham can still do it if Jimmy Graham wants to play and if Jimmy Graham is re-signed. So if you get a tight end in free agency, I love Irv Smith Jr., but he's a lot like what they have in Juwan Johnson. So I think if they target a tight end in free agency, it's got to be a two-way guy that's going to be an inline blocker. A Gerald Everett, Austin Hooper, Jonnu Smith. Those are the names that pop out to me. Mike Gesicki, Irv Smith. I love those two guys, but again, that's a lot like what they already have in Juwan Johnson.
I saw that. I think the Falcons aren't going to bring back Hayden Hurst. No, not the Falcons. Who's Hayden Hurst? Who was Hayden Hurst playing for?
Hurst, I think, played for the Browns last. Don't quote me on that. I know the Falcons
Yeah,
did cut Jonnu Smith.
right. Um, let's see. Hayden Hurst. He's with the Panthers. He's with the
Okay.
Panthers
Wow.
released, and the Panthers just released him. Well, the Panthers, we could spend an hour just on the Panthers' stupidity. Brian Burns. My understanding, Jeremy Chin's going to be available. Um, you know, J.C. Horn may be traded because he can't stay healthy. They just let Hayden Hurst go. So this is a team that's going to burn it all to the ground. And they're going to burn this whole team to the ground. And Bryce Young's going to be a pinata back there again, with no one to throw to, no one to go to for anything. So I'm really the Carolina Panthers. I'm gonna have to get on the podcast of the Panthers,
Yeah,
Pat Chronicles, and see. I mean, I follow the guys on Twitter. They're not saying shit on Twitter
they
right
aren't. They've been eerily quiet.
Yeah, and I don't see anything from Steve Gleason blocking a punt. That's 2003. That's behind us right now. He
Hmm.
does this a couple of times in the 2000s, blocking punts. But yeah, I think they're going to just change their uniform just to black mourning uniforms because they have nothing and they're not
No,
going to do anything. They're giving this coach scraps to work with. Which means they'll probably win the division this year, but whatever.
right.
um, but anyway, I'm kind of like you. I want to get if I can't get Bowers, maybe I'm looking at a tight end. I would feel great if the Saints had a third or fourth round pick to
Yeah,
grab a tight end in the draft. I just feel like fifth round, sixth round, you're really not getting much better than what you already have on the roster. So you're going to have to go in free agency and then maybe see if you can find somebody in the draft or maybe somebody slides or falls. But if you go in there without a free agent already on your roster and you're going to go chase a tight end, you're going to get burned and you're not
yeah.
going to get the guy you're looking for. All right. So that brings us now that's offense. We bring us to defense real quick. Defensive line, because we look at tackles and ends the same way. And I think both you and I feel that defensive end, you got to get this in the draft
Mhm.
because it's just so expensive to get a good defensive end in free agents. They have some. They've got a lot. I'm surprised at the guys that they're letting go out there. But are you with me? We're looking at Dallas Turner, someone like that at 14. If you don't take a guard, I mean a tackle first.
Yeah, that's the way I see it, and all for the same exact reasons why we just talked about at offensive tackle. You
Mm-hmm.
so very rarely get an edge rusher in their prime to hit the free agent market. Now, Brian Burns looked like he's going to get there. Daniil Hunter looks like he's going to get there. That's rare, but these guys are in their prime, and they're going to command a top tier elite level contract. And I can't see the Saints being able to shuffle enough money to do that. I won't be mad if they do. But if they don't, then you're left with bringing in complementary guys. Dorrance Armstrong from the Cowboys is a favorite Saints name right now. But he's a complimentary. He did shit before, excuse my language, he did crap before Micah Parsons got there and started drawing double, triple, and quadruple teams. Charles Harris from the Lions, Jerry Hughes from the Texans, Ashawn Robinson, an interesting prospect to me, inside, outside guy. Those guys I put in the same level as Alex Okafor or Tano Passanio. Good, solid signings, but not additions that are really going to make a huge difference at edge rusher for you. So because of that, I still believe, as I've said all off season, the tackle and edge rusher are needs 1A and 1B for this team. And until I see otherwise, I got to believe that this team is going to address those two needs with their first two draft round picks.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think at 14 they're going defensive end. Jared Verse if he lasts that long, Dallas Turner, one of those kind of guys at defensive end first thing, and then they're going to try and hope they can get a tackle, offensive tackle, at 45,
Mhm.
if not move up a little bit, just because the offensive tackle is a lot deeper than the edge rusher. Not that it's bad in the second round, because you're going to find some good edge rushers in the second round, but I think the difference between the edge rushers that are going in the top 15 picks and the edge rushers that go and say from 16 to 40, that's a big difference
Yeah.
between that level. Whereas offensive tackle, you probably have about 3 or 4 that are elite, potential Hall of Famer guys. Then you've got a good middle ground of solid to Pro Bowl / all pro kind of guys that you could build a 10, 12-year career out of,
Mhm.
who are in that, say, I'm just pulling numbers out of my ass, so forgive me. But yeah, I mean, say from pick, I don't know, 16, 17 to about 50, you've got them mixed in there. And I think that's where the Saints can kind of make their hay. Oh, Deuce, you were so good. You were
Yeah.
so good, Deuce. God, before his knees went. I mean, it doesn't even like he's running that fast. I know he fumbled, but um, it still doesn't like he's running that fast, and he's just pulling away from people. Um, yeah, Chase Young, it's interesting. Chase Young was a 1-year rental for the 49ers.
Mhm.
Um, his inconsistency shows. Oh, Tasaki Jones gets stiffed on there by Warwick Dunn of all people.
Mhm. And Calvin, I wrote about Chase Young a day or two ago. And gave the same kind of pro and con thing that I did with Justin Fields today. So check that out. Yeah, I think Chase Young is a possibility, but his inconsistent production, inconsistent effort, that just he's you're not going to pay the guy a big contract. It's going to be a 1 year prove it type deal. And if he comes in and does great, and you have to face the prospect of, do we pay him a long-term extension or franchise tag him or go back to the drawing board? That's a good problem to have. But again, given Chase Young's inconsistencies, effort and production, along with injury history, I still if you get a Chase Young, that might, depending on the way the draft board falls at 14, that might flip flop your priorities, and then make you say, okay, we're going to take a tackle here and then trade up early in the second to grab the best available edge rusher.
Yeah, if I'm taking a Chase Young, um, and this is the funny part, if I'm taking a Chase Young, I am still definitely drafting a pass rushing defensive end, and I may take one at 14, because at worst, I've got a good experienced depth guy I can rotate in for a good 30 to 40 snaps, and bring my rookie along a little slower.
Mm-hmm.
And I would feel good about that. I would feel really good about my defensive line overall, my edge rusher, compared to how I feel right now.
Yeah.
Because right now it's an old Cam Jordan. You've got second year player, the Notre Dame kid, uh,
Bosky.
Isaiah Foskey, and you got Granderson. That's really your 3 defensive ends. That's a scary proposition. I would like to
Yeah.
have Foskey backing up Granderson right now and rotating in with Granderson, and I'd like to get, you know, say a Chase Young with a Dallas Turner, and I'm rotating those 2 as well. I would feel a lot better about my edge rushers with those 4 than I would. And Cam can come in on certain situations, maybe in a NASCAR package to play
Mm-hmm.
pass rusher defensive tackle, maybe on some other plays to come in to be not so much an edge rusher, but a run stopper. That kind of stuff. By the way, this is the Redskins here. I still think this is the best uniform for the Redskins outside of their classic 70s and 80s uniform. Um, they could have gone to these uniforms and called themselves the Washington Warriors, and
Yeah.
it would have looked great. But that's neither here nor there. I just
Right.
happen to. This just happened to come up, and I'm like, yeah, that's a good looking uniform. That was one of their throwbacks from the '60s. Um, but anyway, defensive tackle. Brian Brzee. There was some talk about bringing in another guy. I am too, Anna. I'm not gonna lie to you. That's why I'm not putting all my eggs in a Chase Young basket. I'm only putting him in there as a part-time player.
Mhm.
I'm still bringing in a pass rusher. Um, but defensive tackle, we've got Saunders. You've got um, Brzee. Do you bring in another defensive tackle, a young defensive tackle, maybe to team up with Brzee, or are you pretty much sitting on the guys that you brought in?
I'd like to see them bring in a young defensive tackle, and you could do so in free agency. You and I talked about two of them last week or week before, and Tim Settle or Jordan Phillips. What about Javon Kinlaw, Greg Gaines, Maurice Hurst, Grover Stewart from the Colts? Those are very, very good guys, against both the run and underrated pass rushers. I wouldn't, unless the kid from Illinois is available in the draft. Hold on, my page just got stuck. Zerhan Newton from Illinois. He's the consensus top defensive tackle, and after that, there's a huge drop off. Huge as in Newton might go in the first round, and there might not be another defensive tackle come off the board until early day 3. Or late day 2. So if you address this position, and you hit the nail on the head with Saunders last week. He became a good story because of what he did in offensive goal line packages, but he didn't do anything defensively. Shepard had a nice year. So I think him and Brzee inside are a good combination, but you need a deeper rotation. So you either need to bring back Malcolm Roach or bring in one of these guys. And Tim Settle is one of my free agency man crushes. I would love to see Tim Settle, but I just named 3 or 4 solid defensive linemen who won't break the bank and are on the 20 side of 30. That would lend a lot to this defense.
Yeah, Calvin threw out Justin. How do you say this name again?
Matt Buki, I think.
Matt Buki. Okay. I think part of it is the Saints would look at bringing a 2-down guy, a guy that you're going to bring in for rundowns, to kind of come in and be that run stuffer. Because on passing downs, that's where they would kick Cam Jordan in the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Shepard still, Brzee, even Passanio inside on passing down. So, you're really looking at somebody who is a much better guy at pushing the pocket and shutting the run down, making these running backs and quarterbacks have to go to the outside where the Saints could kind of cut them off and take the edge away. So, I'm looking at some of the guys that you're talking about, but I'm looking in the draft in the 5th round, those 2-down, big fat plug, run stuffers as a possible guy to come in. And you just, again, like with Chase Young, we're only talking 20 snaps, 25 snaps, 30 snaps a game. We're not talking about the entire game. We're not talking about you starting. We're talking about you coming in on goal line package. We're talking about you coming in and taking the run away and forcing us back into the secondary. Linebacker, however, that's a much more scary proposition because, you've got the ageless wonder in Demario Davis. You've got the inconsistent right now because I still think there's a lot of growth that could come out of him. Mm-hmm. But you've got an inconsistent linebacker alongside of him. And then after that, it's a huge drop off. And, even if you bring back a Zach Bond, I just don't see Zach Bond being that third guy. I don't know who that guy is. So what do you do at linebacker? Because that's a tough position to fill.
Yeah, it really is. And I would love to say that they should and could address the position in the draft. But the Saints haven't drafted well at linebacker, not for decades.
No.
Which is a shame. Linebacker is one of my favorite positions in this draft. I love Peyton Wilson from NC State. Cedric Gray from North Carolina is a good one. Junior Colson from Michigan, I'm a big fan of his game. Curtis Jacobs, from Penn State, and obviously Jeremiah Trotter with the NFL bloodlines from Clemson.
Mhm.
I'd love any of those guys. Like I said, Peyton Wilson's one of my favorite guys in the draft. But again, the reality is I don't know whether it's a poor developing of them or just poor scouting by the scouting department. The Saints just haven't drafted linebackers well. So maybe the better proposition is go get a guy that was Demario Davis's age, 27, 28, when you got him in free agency. Jordan Hicks from the Vikings. Jerome Baker just got released from the Dolphins today, and he's a big one, and he's only 27.
I saw that.
Willie Gay from the Chiefs, who might command a little bit more money, but I'm a big fan of Willie Gay.
Especially when you talk about running quarterbacks and the problems
Mhm.
running quarterbacks. I'm like, go grab him. I kept saying that the entire playoffs. My God, I would love to have a William Gay on this team because that's a guy. He's a spy for running quarterbacks. That's a guy who can run down guys. I mean, that's what you got to have that. I mean, so to me, I think part of the reason why the Saints have had so much trouble drafting linebackers is because I think their profile is all wrong for linebackers. They keep looking for the Pat Swillings, and they're looking for the Ricky Jacksons, and they're looking for especially Vaughn Johnson, linebacker that's 6'4", about 240, with long arms that can go out there and thump people. And the colleges aren't producing those guys anymore. And when they do produce them, people are grabbing them and they're doing different things with them. You kind of have to we talk about the Saints prototype for edge rushers. Well, they got a prototype for linebackers too, and they really need to, and that's what I'm getting at, Calvin. They really need to start looking at the 6'2", 6'1", 220 weak side linebackers because it's a speed game now, and that's what they need now at linebacker. And I think if they can get away from that mentality, because man, I hear you. I love the Dome Patrol. If I could have Blitzberg's linebackers from the 90s, Greg Lloyd, I love the shirt. I wasn't hired for my disposition, and I love the way he looked in pads. But they just don't make those guys anymore. They don't play that kind of football anymore. So find me a linebacker who is 6'1", 6'2", about 220, and can run like a friggin' deer.
And has a little bit of awareness too.
Yeah.
Stephon Anthony checked off all the boxes of their prototype, but Stephon Anthony couldn't diagnose plays worth a damn.
No.
And he really wasn't exposed until the latter part of his rookie season, and once he was exposed, there was no coming back. That's a lot of the problem with Bond as an off-ball linebacker. But again, that wasn't his position in college. That was a lot of the problem with Caden Ellis until they just turned Caden Ellis loose and said, "You just go get this guy. You flow downhill. Just go hit the ball." That's been the problem with DeMarco Jackson, who I thought was going to be a steal out of Appalachian State. I don't know whether it's poor development or poor scouting by the scouting department, or probably more accurately a combination of the two.
Right. It's trying to find certain things. And the other thing is some of these linebackers that they're trying to get to fit the physical prototype, 6'4", 6'3", 240, 235, 250, whatever. They can't run. They're not fast. Or if they find a fast one, he's fast, but doesn't know anything. He cannot diagnose defense. I used to say Stephon Anthony would screw up a 2-car funeral. He couldn't figure out how to figure out the right order for a two-car funeral because it just he had no awareness of what was going on. He couldn't read his keys, and it was frustrating because he was so good at Clemson,
Yeah.
but Clemson, they just turned him loose. They said, "Go get him."
Hmm.
You know, go find the ball and go get the ball carrier wherever they are. And that's what he would do. And he was fast. So he could do that. He could beat the edges and do those things. So, yeah, it's to me, it's the draft. You've got to find them in the draft because you might be able to get one in free agency, but it's going to cost you money. And we're already talking about where you're going to spend your money. It's you just don't have the money to spend on a top linebacker right now. You've got to find a guy a la Demario Davis, somebody from the Jets or somebody that teams are kind of moving on from because they don't think they're ready or good enough or worth a contract extension. And maybe the guy from the Dolphins, but I don't know how much demand there'll be. The good thing with all these free agents we're talking about is because these guys are getting released from their teams, that's a pretty good indication of how teams view these positions in the draft. That they rather bring in rookies on cheap contracts because they're going to overpay their
Hmm.
quarterbacks, their skill players, whatever the case may be. Yeah, Patrick Queen is a free agent. I don't like Patrick Queen. Not just because he went to LSU. I'm just not a fan of Patrick Queen in general because I don't think he is a very smart football player. I think he's
Hmm.
got a lot of Devon White in him,
Yeah.
Devin White in him. And I think he really benefits from the rest of the talent around him, uh, being on the Ravens. So
Hmm.
I know a lot of Saints fans are probably wanting just because of the LSU connection, but that he's just not. He's not the smart ball carrier we were just talking about. All right, so the Saints are going to release Marcus May. So Jordan Howden is probably going to be the first guy to take his place, but you also
Hmm.
have to realize that speaking of LSU, Teron Matthew is getting up there in age. Um, what are you doing at safety? Are you bringing in a guy because it looks like I just saw Jamal Adams, another LSU player. Jamal Adams got released from the Seahawks. Now he never lived up to that contract,
No.
but you're seeing a lot of safeties getting released rather than getting paid, including Marcus May. Are you bringing somebody in free agency, or are you probably going to try and fill this need in the draft in, say, the fifth round, or maybe the compensatory pick in the fourth round?
I'll tell you, I'd like to see them fill it in free agency because there's a bunch of free agent names that I love. But
Hmm.
the reality is, I think because they like Jordan Howden so much and because they think Tyrann Mathieu still has a year or two left, I highly doubt they go looking to spend a lot of money at safety and free agency. If they do, you mentioned Jamal Adams. The other Seahawk I'd prefer is Quandre Diggs.
Yeah.
Uh, Jordan Whitehead from the Jets is a guy I'd love. In Dennis Allen's defense,
Hmm.
you mentioned Jeremy Chin. Extremely versatile guy too. Geno Stone, ball hawk for the Ravens. Now he's going to get a bag. In free agency, Chin probably will too. Jordan Whitehead, I'm not so sure the teams are going to pay him a lot because that's why the Jets are going to let him hit the market. Quandre Diggs still has some ball left in him, has been a little beat up the last couple of years. So I'm interested to see what kind of contract he's going to bring down. I tell you, I don't think a Whitehead or a Diggs is going to get paid as much in free agency this time around as what they did the previous time they hit the market. So the Saints have a chance here. I just don't know that they'll take it.
Well, and this is the funny thing because I really see um, this is the second wave. Once the free agent market is kind of determined what people are getting, this is where the Saints are going to go bargain hunting. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where they bring, that's where they got guys like Lonnie Johnson from, Jonathan Abram, those kind of guys. I can see them doing that again, even bringing those guys back, but bringing in the second tier, cheaper safeties that just didn't get the contract or the offers they thought they would get. Um, So that leaves us with cornerbacks. We've talked a lot about the cornerbacks, but the big thing that happened again this week is somebody came up with some kind of absurd trade scenario, talking about trading Marshon Lattimore for a fifth round. Well, the comments I see are ranging everywhere from "we will burn the facility to the ground" to "it'll be a January 6th" to "we will kill, we will go and picket Gail Benson's house." I can't see them ever trading for a fifth, but you know, we talked a lot about this. Is this a possibility that they even do this? That they trade um, Marshon Lattimore?
Um, I guess it's a possibility. Because I'm not going to say there's a break in the relationship, but there seems to be a little bit of discord between Lattimore and whether it's Dennis Allen, Joe Woods, Marcus Robertson, between Lattimore and somebody within that coaching staff.
Hmm.
Because when Lattimore has been hurt the last couple of years, last 2 years, I'm not going to say he's faking it, because I mean I never believed he was, but he doesn't seem to have the urgency to get back onto the field.
Yeah.
And that usually indicates some kind of disharmony between player and somewhere in the organization. It always does. Um, but the Saints aren't going to give him away. They don't need to. It's going to cost them money on the salary cap, whether he's on big money on the salary cap, whether he's on the roster or not. Simply put,
Yeah.
it'll cost less if it's a post June 1st trade, which is the other issue. Trading Marshon Lattimore absolutely does not improve your team for
Right.
2024. So
Right.
that's why I don't think they ultimately trade him. If they get wowed by an offer, of a 2025 first round pick or 2025 second round pick, along with a conditional day three, then maybe you do pull that trigger because I mean, at that point, Lattimore will be off the books in a year. You can re-sign Paulson Adebo to a long-term deal. You have Alontae Taylor, and I think if you do even consider trading Marshon Lattimore, it's 1,000% crucial that you re-sign Isaac Yiadom.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's a lot of too many ifs and too many working parts. And if this works, then we'll do that, and if that works, we'll do this. You're better off with Marshon Lattimore on your team. And like I said, there's no move you can make that improves your team without Lattimore in 2024.
And I agree with that because my thing is, what is Lattimore worth right now? Lattimore has missed a lot of time over the past couple of seasons. Um, so it's about, to me, he's worth a first round pick still
Yeah,
because
yeah.
of how good he is and how good he makes your team. My question is someone willing to give up a first round pick? Then you're not going to get one this year because you can't afford the cap hit, unless somehow you can trade one of your lower round picks, like one of your fifths, um, to a team to eat part of that cap hit, to make it justifiable. But then you would have to be getting a first and then giving up a fifth to, and maybe a pick in 2025 for them to eat some of that cap money
Right.
so you can benefit from this. But there's so many ifs, like you said. To me, I think there's some smoke. I
Mm-hmm.
think they would put the feelers out there, but I think it's definitely a seller's market in the Saints term. They don't have to give them away. They can mend the fences. They can do the things to make Lattimore happy. But I think the idea is you're right, Calvin. It would be better for the team overall and your cap health overall to move on from him. But you're not making your team better for this year, only if you can somehow get a first round pick this year. if you get a first round pick in 2025, that doesn't make your team better for
Mhm.
2020 2024. That's my take on this. I just don't feel like it's worth it. But I agree with you, Calvin. If you do move on from Lattimore, Alante Taylor to the outside,
Oh yeah.
Adebo, you bring in Yidam. I still think you bring back Yidam anyway. I think
Mhm.
you go get a, a slot corner in free agency because just like we talked about with the physical inside receiver, a slot corner is also going to be fairly cheap. Oh, yeah, you're right because Taylor is a better outside corner than he is an inside
Mhm.
corner. You're right. You're right. I still feel like um, you need to bring in a slot corner, a better slot corner than what you've got. I think I understand the idea of you want Taylor out there, but I just feel like Taylor is struggling too much at slot corner. Um, you really need to keep him on the outside and groom him to move on from Lattimore probably in 2025. All right, Bob. We took a long time to go through it all. We went through the whole roster because I'm not even talking about special teams.
Yeah.
Punter, I want Morstead to come back.
Yeah.
I don't know if he will, but I want Morstead to come back. That's all I have to say about that. Kicker, I'm not fighting with the kicker thing because I think the kid had a good year. It's troubling he missed a couple of key kicks, but for a rookie, I think he had a good year overall. Um, but going to the Bayou Blitz, are you guys going to be on tomorrow night? Or are you going to be on another night?
We're doing Thursday night this week. Brendan's
Okay.
travel plans. I don't remember where he's going to be, but I know he's not going to be available for tomorrow. So we're doing Bayou Blitz on Thursday at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. on the West Coast.
Okay. Um, any guests or anything like that yet?
No, no, I don't want to do a guest any disservice because, as you know, and as you like to do too, when we have guests on here, you like to talk to them about their career, and there's just too much going on with free agency and draft preparation. That I don't want to do any of our outstanding guests, former players, any kind of disservice. So no, just going to be Brendan and I.
Okay, good deal. Last question before we get out of here. Chris Jones was not tagged with the franchise tag from the Chiefs. On a scale of slim to none, what are the odds that the Saints make an offer to try and get Chris Jones to come in and play for the Saints to put next to Brian Brzee?
None.
Yeah.
Absolutely none. And don't get me wrong, Chris Jones is a terrific football player, and I would love him next to Brzee. But you simply can't afford him, and that's not the Saints being in cap hell or anything like that. They'll clear the space to sign the players they need to sign, but realistically, this is planet Earth, and you're not going to
Mhm.
be able to sign Chris Young with your current cap situation.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Chad.
Yeah.
Chris Mortensen passed away this weekend. Chris Mortensen is one of the originals for me as far as NFL insiders. Always was my favorite insider
Yeah.
reporter because it was just the facts. He, John Clayton, and today the Fox guy. I just drew a blank on his name. Um, yeah, those are the guys, the professionals. I used to like Adam Schefter, but he's kind of gotten to the clickbait kind of stuff
Yep.
recently. Since he's jumped from NFL Network to ESPN, that was a long time ago now. But he Chris Mortensen was always my favorite
Me too.
insider in the golden age. And Chris Mortensen was unfortunately the guy who had to talk to Vince Tobin after the whole Trent Dilfer debacle with Mel Kiper Jr., which next to the Jets fans being pissed off at whoever they select, who the hell is Mel Kiper has to be one of the greatest ESPN draft moments ever.
No
And
doubt.
I just, to have Chris Morton getting involved in that, just it's great. It's great. We're going to see him every time because we're going to relive that every year. Do you have a favorite Chris Mortensen memory? Last question before we get out of here.
I mean that's the one. With sitting with Tobin, and who that. But Mortensen was my favorite too, because he reported the facts. He was the first to do so. He was the trusted source, and if he gave his opinion on something he thought it would happen, he stated very clearly that it's my opinion that this will happen, and here's why. No kind of clickbait bullshit, no kind of unnamed sources or anything like that. It was either this is what's going to happen because it's my opinion, or this is what's happening because this is fact. There was no nonsense with Chris Mortensen, and he should be the gold standard for everybody in the media industry. Everybody.
And I think because of what you just said, that's why league coaches, players, and so forth trusted him and would give him that inside information, because it's like, if I tell you this, you're going to present it as part of a story that we want out there, or that it's newsworthy. You're not going to go total clickbait or throw all kinds of conjecture and make me look like an asshole. Yeah, Stuart Scott. Yeah, somebody posted a picture. Rest in peace, my childhood. Stuart Scott, Chris Mortensen, John Clayton, and and John Saunders. All gone from ESPN. And yeah, ESPN has never been the same without those guys. No. Stuart Scott, I remember he gave for the highlights, Saints Rams highlights in the playoff game. He gave a great nickname I had forgotten about until just now. That so and so just got their PhD, player hating degree, right before they made an interception. So great stuff. Bob, thank you for hanging out with all this whole time. I know it's a lot of stuff, but next week is free agency. We're going to be talking about potential moves because the tampering will be allowed, so names will be changing teams already. So this was the last time to talk about really who we could look at and kind of get into that fantasy world. So thanks for sticking with us. And we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Oh, go see the Bayou Blitz Thursday night, guys. But see y'all next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.
Good night.